All right, get this today. We're diving into something a little different. We're talking about how deception can be used to make something seem way more powerful than it actually is. And get this, we're focusing on a figure notorious for this very thing, the devil. Now, before you jump to conclusions, we're not here to promote any specific beliefs. Think of this deep dive as a crash course in strategy. We're dissecting how this whole idea of the devil has been connected to deception for, well, centuries.
The thing about this whole topic that I find intriguing is that it applies whether we're talking religion, culture, psychology, you name it. These tactics, the ones we're about to break down, have some serious real-world implications.
Okay, so let's get into it. Our source material makes a really interesting point right off the bat. It argues that the devil's strength, if you buy into that sort of thing, isn't actually about power. It's about being a master of deception. It's like that saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. Kind of makes you think, right?
Right, it's all about perception versus reality.
Exactly. And to illustrate this idea, they use the story of the Garden of Eden. Think about it. Eve didn't take a bite of that apple because of brute force. It was all about how the information was presented, how the serpent twisted things, made her question what was right, what was wrong.
That example, as old as it is, that perfectly demonstrates how relevant this whole idea of deception is, even or maybe especially in our modern world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. Misinformation running rampant,
Yeah.
propaganda. If you know those really clever marketing campaigns, the ones designed to make you question if you really need that new phone, that fancy coffee maker.
It's all about making you believe something, sometimes without even realizing it.
It's like when you're scrolling online and see those headlines that seem too crazy to be true, but then you find yourself clicking anyway just to see.
And that's why it's so effective. It taps into our curiosity, our doubts, our desire for those simple answers, in a world that's anything but simple. And honestly, it makes you wonder, how often do we accept things at face value without, digging a little deeper, questioning the source, looking for a different perspective, maybe?
It's so easy to just accept something that sounds convincing, especially when it's packaged in a way that seems appealing or, plays on our emotions a little bit. And that's where our source material gets even more interesting. They break down some of the key tactics, strategies, if you will, that have been linked to the devil, throughout history. And they highlight this three-pronged approach: doubt, temptation, and disguise.
All three fascinating, really, because they expose those universal vulnerabilities, the things that leave us open to manipulation, no matter who we are.
Okay, so let's dive into those, starting with doubt. So when they talk about doubt, what exactly do they mean? And how does, the devil, so to speak, actually use that?
So our source uses a powerful example to illustrate this, the story of Jesus being tempted in the wilderness. And even though Jesus ultimately resisted, the story highlights how doubt can be used against us, especially when it challenges our core beliefs.
Right, those things we hold sacred, those fundamental truths.
Exactly, it's that seed of uncertainty, that little voice that makes you question even your deepest convictions.
That little voice in your head that, yeah, but what if? Sure. Even when, deep down something isn't quite right. It's like knowing you shouldn't hit that buy now button, but then that doubt creeps in. What if it's actually a great deal?
And that's where temptation comes in. It exploits that crack in our certainty, that moment of vulnerability.
So when we talk about temptation, are we talking like the classic image of a devil on your shoulder?
Not necessarily literally, but yeah, you're picking up what we're putting down. It's about recognizing how our own desires, especially when we're feeling a little vulnerable, can be used against us.
Which I guess is where disguise comes in. This whole idea of a wolf in sheep's clothing.
You nailed it. Our source talks about how the devil is often portrayed as, get this, an angel of light, as a way to, gain trust, to manipulate. And this isn't just some archaic concept. It's shockingly relevant even today.
Okay, so for our listeners out there, what might that angel of light deception look like in the real world?
Think about cults, for example, or even just individuals who present themselves as helpful, charming, but they have ulterior motives.
So it's the classic bait and switch. Seems too good to be true.
Often is, and that's why it's so crucial to be able to see through those layers, to question what we see, what we hear, to trust our instincts. If something feels off, it probably is.
This is honestly making me rethink how I approach everything. Online articles, salespeople. You know the type? Those overly friendly ones that just have to show you one more thing.
And that awareness, that questioning mindset, that's exactly what we need to cultivate. Because you know what they say, the most effective lies are the ones we tell ourselves.
All right, deep divers, we've covered doubt, temptation, and disguise. All pretty powerful tactics on their own. But how does this all play out on a larger scale? We'll tackle that right after the break. Welcome back, deep divers.
Yeah.
Before the break, we were talking about how deception, it could really play on our doubts, our vulnerabilities, ever make something seem a lot stronger than it actually is.
Right, and we've mainly focused on how that works on a personal level.
But our source material, it doesn't stop there. They point to something even bigger at play.
Yeah, they talk about how these tactics of deception, they operate on a much larger scale, a societal level even.
Okay, so walk us through that. What's this larger scale deception all about?
Well, they call out a few other tactics, things like division, distraction, even pop culture.
Pop culture. Okay, now that one feels a little out there, even for this topic.
I know, right? But stick with me on this. They argue that pop culture, it can be a powerful tool, not always in a good way either.
So what you're saying is our favorite movies, shows, even music could be influencing us without us even realizing it.
It's not about subliminal messages or anything that overt. It's more about the themes, the ones that get presented to us over and over and over.
Okay, give us an example. What kind of themes?
Think about greed, instant gratification, or that idea that, it's okay to bend the rules a little, maybe cut a few corners as long as you come out on top.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. It's like in those movies where the bad guy, they're super wealthy, but got there by, being ruthless. But we're supposed to see them as ambitious, maybe a little edgy, kind of cool, even.
Exactly. And it's not just wealth either. Think about how often you see infidelity, risky behavior, sometimes even criminal activity portrayed as glamorous, exciting.
Right, but in real life, there are consequences to that behavior.
Of course, but on screen, it's all stylized, romanticized even. It desensitizes us.
And then we wonder why people make, well, let's just call them questionable choices in their own lives.
Because those choices, they've been normalized, maybe even glamorized a little by the media we consume. It's like it creates this idea that we're not enough. Not unless we have the latest gadgets, live a certain lifestyle, achieve success at any cost.
It's like we're being sold on an idea that might not even be true, but then we chase after it, and often we end up perpetuating that same cycle.
And that's the danger, of that large-scale deception. It creates a culture where we're constantly striving, but are we striving for the right things? The things that'll actually bring us lasting happiness, fulfillment. It makes you wonder.
So what do? Ditch our streaming services, live off the grid.
Well, that's certainly one way to do it, but there's a more balanced approach.
Okay, I'm listening.
It starts with being mindful, more aware of what we allow into our minds.
Okay, that makes sense, but easier said than done. I mean,
Yeah.
we're bombarded with this stuff from every direction. Social media, TV, billboards.
You're right, it's a challenge, but it comes down to being more discerning
Discerning how?
about everything. The media we consume, the voices we listen to, the messages we internalize.
So less scrolling, more critical thinking.
You got it. Question everything. Look for agendas. Notice those subtle messages that might be trying to sway your perspective. And you know what? Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
Wow, this is making me rethink my entire weekend. I was going to binge watch that new show everyone's talking about. Maybe I'll just, read a book instead.
It's all about balance. You don't have to completely disconnect from pop culture, but being aware of its influence, that's a game changer.
No doubt. We've gone from, the classic image of the devil on your shoulder to something way more pervasive, way more influential.
And what's even more fascinating is that these tactics, these, tools of deception, they often prey on some of our deepest desires.
Which
Our
are,
desire to belong, to be accepted, to fit in.
it's like they exploit that very human need to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. We'll be right back after a quick break to discuss ways we can counter these tactics. Stay with us. Welcome back, Deep Divers. We've been on quite a journey, uncovering how deception operates, not just on a personal level, but also on a much larger societal scale.
It's pretty eye-opening, right, to see how these tactics are all around us, often influencing our choices without us even realizing it.
Absolutely. But now for the big question. What can we actually do about it?
Well, the good news is it's not about becoming some kind of, reclusive hermit or anything.
Right. No need to ditch your smartphone and move to a remote island just yet.
Exactly. It's really about, building awareness and then using that awareness to make more conscious choices in our daily lives.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What does that look like in practice?
Okay, so next time you're scrolling online and you see one of those crazy headlines, Something designed to get a reaction out of you.
The ones that make you go, no way, that can't be true.
Exactly. Instead of just immediately hitting that share button, adding to the noise.
Which, let's be honest, we've all done at some point.
Oh, totally. But instead of doing that, take a moment, take a beat, and ask yourself, who's the source here? Is this a reputable news outlet? Or is it, something with an agenda, something designed to stir up controversy?
So it's about being more discerning about the information we consume, not just taking everything at face value.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just, the news and social media. Think about the brands you support, the products you buy.
Right, like, do those companies actually align with my values?
Exactly. Are they transparent? Are they ethical? These questions matter.
Wow, when you lay it out like that, it really highlights how many choices we make each day that feed into this.
It all adds up. It really does.
It's like that whole be the change idea, but applied to how we navigate this world of, misinformation and deception.
And the best part? The more we do it, the easier it gets. It becomes almost like second nature to approach things with a healthy dose of skepticism, to really think critically about what we're being told.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed or even helpless by all this, we can actually reclaim some of that power.
100%. This isn't about being perfect. We're all susceptible to these tactics. We're wired that way. But it's about learning, adapting, and just doing our best to align our actions with our values.
It's been an eye-opening deep dive, that's for sure. It's like you've given us this new lens to view the world through, one that helps us see those subtle yet very pervasive forms of manipulation that are all around us.
And hopefully it's empowering, too. Knowledge is power, right? The more we understand these tactics, the better equipped we are to resist them. And maybe even create a world where authenticity, where truth actually prevails.
I love that. Well said. Deep divers, we hope this deep dive has been as thought-provoking for you as it has been for us. Remember, stay curious, keep asking those tough questions, and never underestimate the power of your own critical thinking. Until next time, happy diving.